Welcome to the June 11th, 2024 meeting of the USD 305 Board of Education. Call our meeting to order. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There are no additions or changes needed for the agenda. Take a motion to approve. Yes, sir. Thank you. In a second. Got a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. On to recognitions and presentations with You Make a Difference Awards with Jennifer Camion.
Good evening. Tonight we are going to announce a You Make a Difference Award for Corey Chambers, our school resource officer. He serves multiple Salina public schools. We are grateful to Officer Chambers, whose commitment to ensuring the safety of our students and staff has helped create a secure and caring environment for all. His efforts to build meaningful relationships with students while managing the needs of multiple schools truly helps make a difference. Thank you, Corey.
Next up, item 4B, Visible Learning Update with Jennifer Ebel.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Ebel, and I'm the principal at Schilling. And so we have had an exciting year with visible learning. So we kind of broke things down month by month and then used what happened the previous month to move into the next month. And that's how we have kind of structured our journey, as we like to call it, because we took some steps forward and then we reflected and took some steps backward because we didn't feel like we were in the right spot. So I'm going to kind of walk you guys through where we have been. Our staff has been really happy with it because we've really focused on the we and doing it together as we move through it. So in September, our leadership team surveyed students, and we asked our students 3 questions. What does a good learner look like? That was really interesting because we got everything from you need to be respectful, you need to listen, you need to focus, you should wear orange t-shirts, be a nice friend, don't poke people in line. So we had lots of variety on what the kids thought a learner should look like. And then how do you know when you did well was our second question that we asked them. And students did a lot of, well, the teacher puts a star on my paper, or I got a 2 or a 3. So kind of teacher feedback is what our kids told us on that one. And then the last question that we asked our kids was, how do classmates help you with your learning? Because we really wanted to look at that we aspect and how do we form a learning community. And so our kids said everything from partner work to my peers coach me, they don't tell me how to do it. One kid said he was the smartest in the school, so he didn't need anybody's help. You know how kids are. They have all kinds of answers. So we took those answers and used those in October for our October in-service. And we had a barometer, and we said, okay, this is what we're hopeful kids would say. And so, how close are we to where we really want kids to be? So do our students have clarity of what a good learner looks like? And we kind of figured out that, no, they kind of don't. So how can we change our language as adults in the building to help them understand what a good learner does? Because the theme that we saw is that all of the kids were behaviorally compliant. If I sit crisscross applesauce, if I'm quiet, if I stand in line, That's what they felt like a good learner was. And we were like, oh, that's behavioral, that's not learning. And so that was kind of a theme that we saw. Some things that we were really proud of from our student data as we put it out on the barometer for their answers. A lot of our 4th and 5th grade students said, hey, we coach each other, we don't tell each other the answers, which was nice because that showed that our older kids were kind of getting it, but how do we take that down to the younger grades? So what surprised us was the behavior piece, that behavior versus learning. So then we formed our next step, which was how do we get the whole building on board with what a good learner looks like? And how do we shift the focus of kids thinking that just because I sit down and I'm quiet, it means that I'm learning. So that's what we focused on in November. Our leadership team created a survey because from all the barometer pieces and where all of our kids were at with thinking what a good learner looked like, we, as a staff, decided, okay, we need to talk about that together as adults so we can all be on the same page and provide consistency. So in November, we took a survey as a staff, and we listed all the learning dispositions that we had been taught in our training. And these were the ones that our staff voted on and chose to move forward with. So really looking at independence, resilience, self-control, and ownership. And this is where our journey kind of takes a slide backwards, because this is what we started with in November. And then when we went into January and we were having all of these meetings, and we would just bring in grade levels, and then we'd bring in grade levels that were mixed, like a 1st grade teacher and a 3rd grade teacher and a 5th grade teacher and a PE teacher. Like we were trying to mix it up so that we were really learning from each other. And we were able to see perspectives, like this is what learning looks like in my content area, and this is how I do this consistently. So then we took a step backwards because we were like, okay, if we're focusing on that self-control, how we were describing it to one another was really behavioral. So we went back to the drawing board and said, okay, so maybe that's not the learning disposition that we want to focus on. So we went back to the drawing board, came up with our final 4 learning dispositions, talked about descriptors, how we wanted to describe those to the students. Again, focusing on the we and the I language. This is what I as a student do. This is what we as teachers do. And really, that was like probably the most powerful and exciting part of the journey to me, because we were able to really work collaboratively and be like, whoa, 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 whoa. We're kind of like 2 steps forward, but we don't all think we're in the same spot. And so we were able to have that conversation and move backwards to gain more momentum in the long run. So what we decided on is we're focusing on collaboration, learning from others, listening to others, participating, encouraging others, and accepting feedback, and then being independent. So making sure that they're organized and they can self-manage. So we put that in there, which I had said we originally took off, but we didn't feel like it was overarching, like it's a piece of being independent. And then resourceful, being flexible, and being a positive role model to each other. And then our last 2 were perseverance and curiosity. And so really looking at taking ownership of our learning, because if I'm owning it, I know that I still have to keep working at it, and I still need to persevere and show that grit. And then curiosity, and how, if I'm owning my learning, how am I curious about what the next step is and how I extend that learning? So those were kind of the 4 that we decided on, and then we decided how we wanted to display them within our school, how we want to roll that out to parents so that parents are aware of what we're focusing on. We really focused on the vocabulary of our descriptors. That way we could teach it in kindergarten or in 5th grade. So we might be pushing those kindergartners to understand the word explore, but is that important for them to learn? Yes, it is. So we talked a lot about vocabulary because that's so important to our students at Schilling. Okay, so that was like the journey, January, February, March. Then in March and in April, we kind of shifted because what we were doing was we were fine-tuning and making things look nice and pretty and working on those things in the background. So at our March and April in-services and meetings, we focused on learning intentions and success criteria because staff really felt like we had nailed the one thing, and so then we were moving on to the next. And so this is where we're currently at still. So at that in-service day, we really dove into the standards and creating learning intentions and success criteria. And the teachers have even said, you know what, the ones we did in March, like that was our first shot at it. And that wasn't like, now we know a little bit more and we want to refine those. So the beauty of the process is the staff seeing, okay, this is what we came up with, but now that we've learned a little bit more, we need to go back and fix what we did because we have more knowledge, which gives us more power to make it better. So that has been a wonderful thing that as a staff we've experienced together, and that we piece. So as we move forward, we are still, our learning dispositions, I kind of talked about we're putting that forward, parent information that's going to roll out in August and September. This year we're working on revising our title compact so that our compact includes the language of those learning dispositions. We're working on posting it in all of our classrooms, and then we have a plan for rolling it out during our counseling lessons and during our morning meetings and those teachable moments so that kids are getting the same language from all the teachers in the building, all the staff. And then our learning intentions and success criteria, we have an optional in-service day that our staff voted for because they really feel like they need to continue to dig deep on this because we haven't mastered it yet. So they voted in that optional day so that they can continue their work on it. So overall, our staff has done really well with it. They like that it is individualized kind of by our school. Like, we didn't have to rush forward onto the next thing. We were able to say, whoa, let's take a step back because that's where we were. We needed to take a step back and refine and what worked for us. So it's been really exciting for our staff to do that. So that's where we're at. Any questions for me?
I'm just very impressed that everybody's so engaged and you're making these steps that no one told you to make. I guess sort of they told you you should do something with it, but you've done more than that. So it seems really great. And I do some work in the schools and I'm trying to imagine how to have visible learning in my programs. So yeah, thank you.
I'd like to just compliment you on going back to the I statements. I think as a society, it's been more of a you. And I really like that we're kind of turning it back and holding kids responsible for themselves. So great job.
Anybody else, questions, comments? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next on our agenda, post-secondary credit presentation, Dr. Curtis Stevens.
All right, good evening. I'm suddenly regretting the font size. My eye doctor told me I would be going to bifocals soon, but I think he was wrong. It's now, so we'll see how we do here. I just want to go over a couple of things tonight on post-secondary credits, but doing it in a little bit of different format to express gratitude to the Salina Public Board of Education for all of your work and allowing us to move some of our programs over the last 4 to 5 years. We've been able to do some pretty remarkable changes to our courses. So I just want to extend a thank you to that, and your role as board members in this journey and the support you've given us has contributed significantly for us to be able to do it. And evidence of such support is as follows. Our district approximately 2,089 high school students at Central, at South, and SVIA. About 1,890, or 90%, of our high school students are enrolled in at least one technical or application career and technical education course. So when you look at that triangle, introduction would be like that first class they take, and then they're taking a sequence of that pathway to be able to achieve the completion status of a pathway, which opens up the door to multiple other types of possibilities if they go on to college in Kansas. And there's about 167 articulation agreements that when you complete those pathways, it saves students time in taking future coursework, it saves them money. But to do that, they have to have that emphasis and really be focused on what they want to do. And so because our district offers over 20 separate career pathways, just to name a few: teaching and learning, engineering and applied manufacturing, construction and design, health science, web and digital communication, power structural and technical systems, just a few there. We've seen a 251% increase in pathway completion over the past 7 years. And that has taken an incredible amount of work for not only our teachers in developing curriculum, getting trained in the curriculum, our guidance counseling staff in helping students find out about those opportunities, but also working, David Cooper and his work with Carl Perkins, and making sure our pathways are compliant with the state changes. We've brought several course changes to this board to be in compliance with that so that we can continue to offer those to our students, and you've always supported us as we made those changes. Also want to thank the board that our students benefit from 57 different career and technical education courses within the walls of our school without having to leave our campus. Our students have also access to approximately 200 Salina area technical college courses, 110 dual credit college courses through K-State and Bethany College in the following areas: the General Education Certificate or Passport, Applied Business, Electric and Computer Engineering, Aviation Maintenance, which currently right now in Salina is, pardon the pun, taking off, right? We are seeing an incredible amount of job opportunities. I had a chance this last February to see the first graduation of the Aviation Innovation and Maintenance, which is a 6-week course that students can take, adults can take it, and when they complete it, they have access to kind of that pre-apprentice certification. One particular student, his first name is Seth, rode his bike every day for 4 miles to the training and 4 miles back home every day for 6 weeks, didn't miss a day. That student now is opening himself up to having a $25 an hour job in a local industry here in town that has been working with a variety of different partners, and 305 has been a part of that. So just kind of shows you these different avenues that our students have. Additional dual college credit courses, web development, criminal justice, and teaching as a career, which we know we need more of. I'd like to thank the board also that our high school students have achieved these milestones, in many cases completing their certificates or their post-secondary credential. In one particular case, we had last year 4 high school students who completed their associate's degree 1 week before their high school graduation, with tremendous savings. The board's recognition that not all students want to pursue an associate or bachelor's degree is also forward-thinking as well. We have brought on, because of your support, industry-recognized credentials such as allied health, certified nurse assistant, medical assistant, applied manufacturing, automotive excellence, or ASC certification, digital media user design, early childhood, EMT, HVAC or heating and air conditioning, OSHA 10, and then this year we have added 2 credentials that are at no cost to the student, one being for data analytics, which is really a booming area because data analytics, what's nice about this industry recognized credential, students don't have to specialize in one particular pathway to earn it. Data analytics is absolutely used in every single industry that exists. And it's just such an integral part now that everybody has a cell phone. They're using it for marketing, for agriculture. Data analytics is something that we trained our teachers on, and there's an upfront cost to training them. But after that, students don't have to pay. They go through that training. We're integrating that into our 9th grade algebra course so that students have that training using Tableau program as well as that data analytics piece all through high school, which we're seeing just being applied across all the pathways. We also added a pre-pack family and consumer science credential. This one costs per student that takes it. It's $25. It is not easy to achieve. We piloted that this year, and we had great success. We're still aligning our curriculum and working through that, but students will be eventually taking that as kind of a final for their financial literacy class. And I can assure you, as I was looking over the curriculum for it, there's just a tremendous amount of information in there that you see a lot of social media about. I wish they would teach this in our schools. Well, I can guarantee you we are teaching it. Now we're going to add this credential that will prove that students have that awareness, that knowledge that often trips up a lot of people later on in their lives because of poor financial planning or financial decisions early on that they just didn't know. Now all these items are crucial, but I want to stress the achievements matter beyond just a high school diploma. In addition to industry-recognized credentials, this district launched its first work-based learning experience with Great Plains Manufacturing. That's a tricky area to get students to be able to go do a work-based learning experience because obviously it's manufacturing, and manufacturing has a lot of challenges in terms of making sure that the students stay safe and that they're able to get the skills in a manner that the employer is comfortable with, that we are comfortable with. And Great Plains Manufacturing, this year, they actually hired numerous students from both Central and South. As they are looking for needs for labor, they're also looking for students who want to grow with the company. And our students were able to benefit from having that real-world experience while also taking their classes. So as you look across all of these types of learning experiences, we're definitely not just pigeonholing kids into one pathway or that they have to go to college, a 2-year or 4-year. A lot of options here for our students to take. The Commissioner of Education, Randy Watson, calls it kind of diploma plus. So looking beyond just graduating high school, but actually leaving here with a credential that can help separate you from others when you're applying or get you a livable wage even while you're working on continuing your education. I also want to add in here that when you really look at the items that play a role in whether students have post-secondary success and earn these credentials, a big piece of this is money, right? It's tough to fund such opportunities. And this board a couple of years ago said, well, you know, it's great that we're offering this, but how are we ensuring that students have access to it? So I just want to speak just briefly on that. Through Senate Bill 155, or what is now also called the Excel CTE Scholarship, any one of our students, whether they have money or not, can take a technical or a career and technical education class through Salina Area Tech. There are some classes that you cannot use that funding for, like your general education credits, but you can do an entire program of the certificates that I've kind of indicated with having the funding for that. We also have worked very hard with Dane Hansen Foundation in providing micro scholarships. We have given out over $50,000 and have benefited about 80 students, is the last count I had, that earned a $250 micro scholarship to be able to take their first college class. And that would be something that doesn't qualify under that Excel scholarship program. That is work that is still more needs to be done in figuring out how we can fund that. I cannot begin to tell you when a student completes an industry-recognized credential or a certificate or some type of post-secondary asset when it comes to an associate's degree or even just a college class. It starts this idea that this is also something that I can do. And in a partnership with Kansas Wesleyan, Salina Area Tech, and K-State Salina this year called It's For Me, we really reached out to underserved students and tried to get them exposure to our local opportunities here. It was extremely successful. We're going to, the district is going to continue that in the future, and we had really good feedback from students. So planting the seed that this is something you can do, this is something that is possible, that money doesn't always have to be a barrier. I think it's absolutely successful, especially for our students who are at home under the roof of their parents and they've kind of got that guidance. In some cases, our classes, in our high school classes, our teachers are teaching concurrent credit. We have been working very hard with Salina Area Tech to expand that to all of our core areas when and possible. And the one hurdle I have right now is speech, and I think I've got both teachers in both high schools with that speech credential, so I'm looking forward to seeing that I can get that done to where students are able to take speech and have a college credit later on. Probably the biggest problem that we have to overcome with post-secondary success is no different than any other district, and that is to make sure that people are aware of what we offer. Every beginning of the year orientation, when working with parents, one of the things I said as a principal is that this is not a high school. This is a career and post-secondary institution because of the opportunities we have. So to any parent listening tonight, there's just a few items here, and I'll wrap up, that I want to stress. And also for our board, if you have questions of what we've had in community chats with parents about, these are really crucial items to be able to leverage and take advantage of post-secondary opportunities that we have. Number one is to encourage our students to use Zello to explore their interests. Now, Zello takes work, and so it's not always popular, even with my own students at home. But I encourage them to do that, to find out what their interests are, to develop a 4-year high school plan so that they can take advantages of all of the items that we offer. Planning ahead, scheduling a meeting with your student's counselor, attending parent-teacher conferences, and asking a lot of questions. Anything that's great takes a tremendous amount of work. And I'm never going to tell this board or any other board that this is easy. It's not supposed to be easy. It's an adult endeavor. You have to buckle down, you have to look at the options that exist and advocate not only for what you're thinking your kid might want, but also recognizing what they want and ensuring that they're getting every opportunity. Knowing a couple of questions, whether or not your student plans to attend post-secondary training, either in high school or afterwards, is crucial. Are they going to go to a 2-year, a 4-year, or do some kind of specialized training? Are they going to stay in the state of Kansas? Knowing those questions early on can have a tremendous impact in making post-secondary success affordable, and will save them a lot of money. And case in point, in those 4 students that graduated with their associate's degree, because they knew what they wanted to do early on, it was a difference of paying about $7,700 versus $50,000 at one of the Regent schools for 2 years of college education. So in talking to a couple of financial planners as a parent, I'm like, okay, how do I begin to save for college? The clock starts when they're born, and you got 18 years. In many cases, you're not going to be able to save that amount because of the growing costs of tuition. But you can hedge that cost by leveraging and planning and looking at what courses can be offered at a cheaper rate. Now, keep in mind, you cannot get financial aid in high school. We talked to parents about that. You can only get that after you graduate. So it is a barrier, and it's something that I challenge the Education Foundation, the local organizations here in town, to try to continue to build foundations and endowments to help that. Now, we already have a tremendous amount of support in that, the LIFT program, et cetera, so I don't want to discredit that. But it does become a barrier, even $7,000 when you're in high school, to try to get that. And so we're looking for other ways and other foundations to do that. Last, and a couple of things here, when we're talking about cost, if you look at articulation agreements in Kansas that I spoke of earlier, the savings can also come from that. There is a website, and I encourage any parent to go on there, and if anybody at the board wants to see it, I will take them to my office and show them right after this meeting, in fact. It's called Kansas Degree Stats. This website will allow you to compare colleges, programs. You'll look at the success rate. You'll look at the length of time that it takes. In one specific example, 2 colleges in Kansas offering the same credential to become a nurse is a difference of $60,000. So if you can't afford and you don't have this big trust fund and somebody to pay for your education, if you do, that's great. If you don't, you're going to have to use the capital that you have, what exists between your ears, and really dig in and look at the enrollment guide and work with your counselors to try to plan ahead. The last item on there, too, is 9th grade. A student cannot take dual, concurrent, or blended credit unless they have an individualized education program that qualifies them for giftedness. So knowing that's important, because if a student takes speech their 9th grade year, and they're wanting to take it for concurrent credit, they'll want to wait till their 10th grade. So these are the kinds of little details that can have a big impact. We're continuing to train our guidance counselors, and they are working hard to ensure that our students have this. Attendance and grades matter so much, especially in that freshman and sophomore year, because it can keep a student from being able to enroll and take advantage of some of those college opportunities while they're in high school, whether it's Salina Area Tech and qualifying with an ACT, an SAT, or AccuPlace score. And I would also add that, yes, and I'm to blame for this, I'll own this completely. Our enrollment guide is not easy to navigate. It is 154 pages. But as I said again, when you offer so many opportunities for our students, it's hard to narrow that down if they don't have an idea of what for sure they want to do or what plan they want to follow. And it is tough in high school to nail down what it is you want. It was never Curtis Stevens' plan to become a school administrator. That was not in the cards by any means. And so when I go back and look at my own high school experience, sometimes you don't know until you start into a career. And so what we want to do is try to find ways that we can at least leverage them for general education credit. The general education passport currently right now will allow any student, if they complete it, to go to any of our Regent schools and be able to start in on that program. And that would be what I would encourage any student who does want to go to college do before they choose a major. Overall, our district's success has been tremendous when you look at the growth of the CTE programs, the growth of the college credits that students have taken. I've estimated this before, and it's a little bit fuzzy, but I think we're around now about $2.5 million that these programs have saved our parents and the taxpayers of 305 by leveraging and being willing to have a board support these kind of changes. It's just tremendous to have that. So overall, I would just say that while our graduation rates do matter, the breadth of opportunities we afford our students go so much farther beyond the confines of a high school. And a Diploma Plus is worthy, but it takes planning, and it also takes the leadership of everybody in this community, including the board, to make those opportunities happen. If you have any questions at all, I will answer those at this time.
Questions?
I'll just say, we're going to miss you, Curtis.
Oh, well, thank you. You guys are in great hands. You're going to do very well. I do want you to know that I will be in the area, and if there's a post-secondary partnership to be had, 305 will be getting emails from me to join it, and I hope they extend that to us as well, because suddenly Salina area is taking more focus for me. So thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, sir. On to item 5 of our agenda, approval of the consent agenda. Those items tonight are the minutes of the May 14th, 2024 regular meeting, the personnel report, the financial reports, including the May bills list, the April treasurer's report, the April investment report, and the April journal entries. Approval of the following encumbrance listings. First, to Accelerate Education in the amount of $20,713 for licenses for the educational curriculum at the Salina Virtual and the St. Francis Residential Treatment Facility campus. To Mastery Connect for licenses and professional development in the amount of $28,416. To Illuminate Education for the FastBridge renewal in the amount of $26,400. To Edgenuity for the annual renewal in the amount of $49,150. To Curriculum Associates, Inc. in the amount of $208,223 for the renewal of iReady. To Akita Box for the annual software subscription renewal in the amount of $37,862.50. To Johnson Controls in the amount of $38,714.16 for the annual service agreement for the CCTV and electronic entry service contract, and for the district's annual insurance package renewal in the amount of $1,340,519. Approval of the South Middle School chiller repair to Train in the amount of $69,974, and approval of the McKinney-Vento Education of Homeless Children and Youth Competitive Grant Request in the amount of $60,000. Questions, anything to remove or motion to approve? Yes.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Got a second from Scott. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We had no request for item 6 for our public forum, so we'll move on to item 7A, graduation requirements, with Dr. Stevens again.
Okay. This is just to update our graduation requirements so that they are in compliance with recent additions and modifications made by the state of Kansas. Overall, the two items that changed really are to allow more opportunities, but one in particular, though, is that the attendance percentage of a student that was a post-secondary asset, which students are required to have 2 from either a career-ready standpoint or an academic standpoint. It moved from 90% to 95%, so it increased the rigor of that. And then the other one is with the Career and Student Technical Organization, or Career Technical Student Organization, CTSO. And it is if a student becomes a state officer, so like FFA, BPA, those kind of organizations that are in that CTE area. If a student becomes a state officer, that counts as a post-secondary asset. So those are two of the changes. Quite honestly, the other changes that we went through, we gathered teacher input about a year and a half ago. Those all still stand, and many districts have followed similar trends of what Salina Public Schools is doing for our graduation requirements. Do you have any questions on those items?
Are we making changes, or how does that process work from, like, the Board of Ed approves these?
Yes.
And
So it's my understanding that once we have these requirements kind of come from the state that, I guess we have to, you just adopt them and then we add them in. Just know that those will be updated upon action from this board immediately. They'll be added to Zello, our enrollment guide, and eventually our student handbooks.
It feels like we don't really have control over them, so is it possible for us to just make a motion that says we approve the state-approved post-secondary assets, and then going forward, they're just approved?
Yeah, I tried to do some wording for you in the recommendation that you could maybe reword into a motion that would allow us, it would authorize the administration to adjust those assets in response to any future state changes. And then, of course, we'd need to adjust board policy if something impacted board policy. But this would allow us, as they shift and change those, to go ahead and just update, unless it was something directly in board policy. And then, of course, we would bring those back to you.
Yeah.
I just know from the State Department experience, I don't think anyone expects the first year of this program to look the same in 12 months. So might as well not come back before us to rubber stamp it.
Okay.
Questions on any of that? Not, I take a motion, print it in your packet.
I move that we adopt these updates as presented to be in compliance with the state of Kansas graduation requirements, and that we authorize the administration to adjust the post-secondary assets in response to any future state updates.
Thanks. In a second. Dana seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, sir. Now on to item 7B, agreement with the City of Salina regarding the South Park property.
Okay, let's talk about South Park, just so that you know the property that I'm referencing as I go through this. It is the area where the Salina Education Center is located, formerly Opportunity Now, over on South 3rd Street. The Mulberry Street property is what we're talking about. I want to give you a little bit of history on this property because we have been working over the last several years to get the city to agree to remove the reversionary language on the property. And I want you to understand why there is a reversionary clause on this particular piece of land. 219 South 3rd is actually known as South Park. And so when you hear the city talk about it, the city of Salina, they will call it South Park. We will call it the Salina Education Center because that's the name of the building that's located there. There was legislation in 1937 that actually authorized the city to give property to local school districts as long as that property was going to be used for educational purposes. In 1938, the city then actually conveyed that property to USD 305. And so the original documents are written in script. It's really interesting to read all those original documents that we had to go through to figure out exactly how do we, in combination with the city, unravel that revisionary language. So the land is subject to the reversionary clause only if we're no longer using it for educational purposes. As long as we're using it for educational purposes, it's ours to use. But if we cease to use that property for something education related, then it goes back to the city as their property and it's park property. So right now, I want to be really clear, there is a portion of that property that USD 305 does own. We own the land that is directly adjacent to Mulberry Street, and I'm going to show you a visual here in a minute. The Salina Education Center and the parking lot for the Salina Education Center are located on the land that is subject to that reversionary clause. Okay, so some of it we own just outright, and some of it has that reversionary clause on it. So here's the visual, and it's not great, but that very bottom rectangle there that has the dark line, those 5 lots are the lots that USD 305 owns. The area up above where it says Tract 2 and clear up where it says Tract 1, that is land that is subject to the reversionary clause. You can see where our building actually is located, and you can see where our parking lot is located that actually connects the two streets right there. Okay? So the piece of land that we really are talking about is the piece of land that we don't own outright. And then at the top of that visual, there's a little area that has some houses and lots that are actually owned privately and have private homes on them. Okay, so what started us into this conversation? We had several people call us about the vacant property that we own, wanting to develop that. Because with the Salina downtown development and the river project, that particular piece of property is very appealing as a place to actually do some multifamily, market rate, residential development. You'll also remember that Oakdale's enrollment is not a real full building, and so we of course would like to have some development in that area. So if we could get that reversionary language off of the books, what that would allow us to do is actually combine the property that we own and part of the property that's subject to the reversionary clause to be able to sell it for market rate housing. Okay, I'm going to go back to the visual. So what we're really talking about is those 5 lots at the bottom that are ours, and then that little next rectangle that's Tract 2 that goes up to our parking lot. Trying to get that reversionary language gone on that Tract 2, and at the same time removing it on Tract 1 in case we decide in the future that we'd like to vacate that property and then it would be able to be redeveloped. So the redevelopment agreement, what we've arranged with the city and what you see in your packet is that if we as a board, if you as a board decide to approve this, the city would initiate the public notice that is required to relinquish that reversionary interest. The reason that there is a public notice is that it would revert to park property. So that's just part of the process. And then if protested, the city would actually submit the proposition during the next regular election for a public vote on whether or not that reversionary language could be removed. If that reversionary interest is removed, we would then, USD 305, would immediately apply to the city to split the piece of property into 2 tracts. I'm going to go back just a minute and show you this again. So right now, the way that this property is actually divided, that Tract 1 and Tract 2 are all one piece of land. So if this moves through, what would happen is we would immediately say to the city, we'd like for you to split that into two pieces of property, tract 1 and tract 2, so that if we can come up with a way to develop our property and tract 2, that we could move forward doing that. It just gives a little bit larger piece of land and makes it more appealing to a developer. To find where I am. Okay, so at that point, then what would happen is we would work with the city to define a process that we would use to actually get proposals for development. We would be in control of when we would sell, so it wouldn't have to be immediately we're going to dispose of the land. The property, what we are agreeing to, though, is if we sell, that property, that tract 2, would be used for multifamily market rate residential development. That really is a win-win, as I talked about before. The proceeds of the sale would be split between the city and USD 305. So the land that we own outright, of course, that money would come to USD 305 if we sell, and the land that is subject to that reversionary interest, that tract 2 area, that money would go to the city. And we could sell our own property at any time if no proposal is agreed upon. So we still have the ability to sell the property outright that we own. If we wish, at some point, tract 1, which is the area where the building and the parking lot is situated, that could be sold for redevelopment. And at that time, because that is land that was subject to that reversionary clause, pre-approval of the city's governing body would be required. But you'll notice in the actual agreement, it says that would not be unduly withheld. So they really do want that area to be developed just like we do. Then proceeds would be shared between USD 305 and the city. What we would do probably is appraise that building, and we USD 305 would get the money for that would be attributable to the building, and the city would get the money that would come from the actual property at that time. So what we were trying to do was not have to be back at the table should we ever decide we wanted to sell the area where the building was located and having to go through this again. We decided, you know what, we really just need to do it in one fell swoop. So with that, I will answer any questions that I can.
Several times you mentioned mutually agreed upon as far as selling of the property. Who's going to have that determining voice, i.e., this is a deal that we want to make, we want to move forward with that? Is that going to be the school or the city in the event that you do not agree equally?
So the way that the agreement is written is that, and the intention really would be that we would look to sell the property that's directly facing Mulberry that we own and tract 2, that small piece that's just south of the parking lot. And so at that point, if we're going to sell those two together, we would actually talk to the city. We would work with their governing body. I would work with Mike Scragg, and our two attorneys would work together. And we would come up with some language, and it would be approved similarly to this, I think would be the intention. If we can't come up with something that is mutually agreeable, and we decide that we want to just sell what we own outright, we can. And then at that point, you guys as the governing body, Board of Education of USD 305, you would be the ones to make the determination how we move forward. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Just say thanks, because it's been a long negotiation, long and hard. Thank you.
Just to understand correctly, obviously the 5 lots on the south, proceeds from that would come to the district. Tract 2, you're saying on a sale of that, all the proceeds for the portion of tract 2 would go to the city?
Correct. So we own outright the 5 lots at the south. The proceeds from that absolutely would come to us, no matter how it's sold, whether it's sold in combination with tract 2 or on its own. that money would come to us. And track 2, because that does have that reversionary interest on it, the proceeds from that portion of it would go to the city. So yes, you're understanding that correctly.
If that's the case, then why wouldn't the city just sell it?
They can't sell it because right now, with the way that 1937 law happened, they have conveyed the property to us. And so we are currently using that area for educational purposes. And so until and unless we are no longer doing that, it's ours. So it's a really interesting situation, digging through all of that and trying to figure out how we move through this. That was the trick.
I get that part. The thing that's confusing me is, we own the 5 lots. We sell those, that's up to us to do that deal. But then we say we mutually agree, but then in the end, when we sell it, all the proceeds go to them, so why is there a need for a mutually agreement?
Because the idea would be that we would sell, we can't sell that without their approval because if we're not going to use it, it reverts to parkland. So that's one thing. The other thing is that it's more appealing to have that Mulberry front property combined with that track 2 if you're going to do a multifamily housing development. So they can't sell it until we vacate it, if you will. And what that would mean is that we would be leaving that, at some point, if you don't approve this, and we would decide that we were no longer going to have a school facility on that area, then at that point, they could sell it. But until then, they can't.
So I guess the mutually agreed portion that's mentioned is the mutually agreement is we agree we want to sell it together, and then we each decide on our separate prices.
No, the mutually agreed would be that we would go out for proposals for how the land would be used. I'm sorry, I wasn't understanding your question. We would go out for proposals for a multifamily housing development to go in there, market rate properties. And the city and the school board would agree on whether or not those proposals would be approved. So we would agree on what exactly it is that we were going to say we were accepting proposals for, and then the actual proposals before we release the land for development. Our interest is we want to control what is happening right there by our school. And they really are interested in making sure that we get that market rate multifamily housing and do some infill down in that downtown area.
And I would say that their tract is a lot more valuable if it's along with our tract, if they are sold together in a package.
Right. I think that ideally, we would allow somebody to have both of those because of what they could put there. And then long-term, if we no longer need that other, that building that is right there, say we do something long-term differently with that program, that transitions program, then that would be a nice place for expansion or, because it is right there by the river and all the development that's going to happen right down there. So, yeah, it certainly makes it more appealing to have both of them.
So in the sale, would those be 2 separate pieces, or are you going to combine those and make them one?
We would combine them.
Any other questions, comments? This is on our action agenda. Can you provide any color to the just kind of discussion of the breakdown of proceeds from track 2 and the future breakdown of proceeds on track 1? I mean, I get the city, we're kind of in the city's hands on allowing the reversionary interest to be removed, but we've also maintained the property since 1938. The district has.
Right.
were there any discussions kind of through that process as to how that breakdown would happen?
Yeah, the discussion really was that on tract one, that there would be probably an appraisal of the building and the improvements that we've made because of the facility there, and that we would get that portion, you know, and then the appraisal of the entire area, and we would get that portion of the cost of whatever we sold that for, would be the way that tract one would happen. On tract two, we didn't discuss, you know, that's something that, and maybe we need to go back and have more conversation. On tract two, I think that our portion of that land probably is more valuable than tract two. So I think the way that the agreement is actually written, that it would be just kind of a division based upon the acreage, the square footage of the land. And they would get the portion that is actually attributable to the area that they own, and we would get what's attributable to our area.
Okay. It just, the most use that our 5 lots in tract 2 have gotten over the last 30 years is in the week of the Smoky Hill River Festival, and we have had the privilege of maintaining it since 1938, all of it, so.
Right. Yeah, it's used for parking at that time, but other than that, at one time it was used for marching practice for Roosevelt Lincoln. But since then, as far as school use goes, other than being the lawn for the green space around that building.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions, comments, or motion?
Okay. I move that we approve the agreement relating to the sale of real estate by the City of Salina and USD 305 as presented.
Motion, is there a second? Thanks, Dana. I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to our discussion. Oh, no, one more, sorry. 7C, 2024-2025 School Site Council, Ms. Shannon Rector.
Hello. In the packet, you have a list of the proposed membership for site council and dates for site council meetings at each building. And so those were gathered and presented to my department from the principals. And so it just outlines the membership and the dates for the 2024-25 site council membership. And that is in alignment with board policy IB. Any questions?
Questions, comments, or motion?
I move that we approve the 2024-25 school site council memberships and meeting dates as presented.
Thank you. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Ian. Motion in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Now on to the discussion agenda and discussion of the 2024-2025 support staff handbook with Steve Dwartzweiler.
Good evening. On May 7th, the Salina Public Schools met with classified representatives regarding the support staff handbook. The support staff handbook governs classified employees, which include the district's paraeducators, custodians, and other support positions not required to be licensed by the Kansas Board of Education. Individuals present during the meet and confirm meeting include board members Bonnie Schamberger and Ann Zimmerman, classified representatives Mitch Loader from Maintenance and Operations, and Nancy Springer from CKCIE. District administration was represented by Aaron Wright, Lisa Peters, and myself. Within your packet are the recommended changes to the support staff handbook that came from that meeting. At the very front of the handbook, there is a modification of rights disclaimer. It is being recommended that we add a sentence to that disclaimer that essentially states that if there is updates or modifications to the support staff handbook mid-school year, that those will be published as an addendum and made available on the Salina Public Schools Human Resources website. Section 2.9 work performance evaluations. It's simple language changes that's being recommended to reflect the current practices of the Salina Public Schools. Section 5.2, parental leave. Parental leave was added to the support staff handbook for the 22-23 school year. We are recommending striking the sentence that says when the language is effective, just as a means of keeping the handbook up to date. Section 5.3, sick leave. We believe we discovered a typo within the handbook and are recommending that we replace the word calendared with the word scheduled. Also in section 5.3, you'll notice that there is some language that is being recommended to be stricken from the section 5.3. And the reason why we're doing that is we're also recommending that we add section 5.3.3, bereavement leave. This section adds 2 days of paid leave for bereavement purposes of an immediate family member. And if leveraged, this leave would not be taken from the employee's personal sick leave or PTO leave. The language that is being recommended is the same language that was added to the negotiated agreement last year for teachers. With that, are there any questions?
It is on our discussion agenda, but if there is a desire, we could move that to our action agenda tonight as well to approve that. Anyone wants to make a motion? Yes.
I move we approve the 2024-2025 support staff handbook as presented.
Thank you. In a second. Thank you, Paul. Motion in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. And on to the 2024-2025 professional technical handbook.
Thank you. Historically, district employees who do not have an employment contract have been governed by the support staff handbook. The support staff handbook has been used to outline the rules and procedures for 2 separate employee groups who are placed on 2 separate salary schedules. The 2 employment groups covered by the support staff handbook are classified employees and professional technical employees. Classified employees include positions such as paraeducators, custodians, food service workers, and other hourly positions. Professional technical employees are salaried employees who, due to their level of expertise and responsibility, are not eligible for overtime compensation per the Federal Fair Labor Standard Act. In essence, these employees are typically in mid-level management positions and as such are compensated for ensuring their position responsibilities are fulfilled regardless of the amount of time it takes them to do so. Some professional technical positions include network engineers, accountants, human resources staff, and management positions within the maintenance and operations department. The district currently employs 42 professional technical employees. The handbook being presented today mirrors the support staff handbook that was approved earlier this evening. Since professional technical employees are not compensated at an hourly rate of pay, references to timekeeping and overtime requirements have been removed. A section regarding an employer-funded retirement account was added within the handbook. The district currently funds $1,000 per year for each full-time teacher and administrator into a 403B retirement account. The language included in the professional and technical handbook seeks to extend the same benefits to professional technical employees. It is important to note that although professional technical employees are not licensed by the board or the Kansas State Board of Education, a lot of these positions require the same amount of training and education requirements as some of our licensed administrators and teachers. With that, are there any questions?
Questions or comments? Same opportunity exists on this one. If there are no objections, we could move that to our action agenda as well.
I'll move that we approve the 2024-2025 professional technical handbook as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dana seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
On to discussion agenda item 8C, enterprise agreement with Paul Minching.
Good evening. Unlike Dr. Stevens, I do need readers, so it's just the beauty of age, I guess. Tonight, we want to present you with the proposal to add minor transportation to our lease agreement with Enterprise that's located in your packet. You may recall that last fall, we entered into a pilot lease agreement with Enterprise to replace our aging fleet of vehicles. We started with maintenance and operations vehicles because Enterprise has a company-wide policy that requires its partners to have $5 million in auto liability insurance for minor transportation only. We've included in the documents outlined a process for self-insurance agreement which would meet the coverage requirements for minor transportation vehicles to be leased from Enterprise, thus attempting to add such vehicles to our fleet at the agreed-upon budgetary limits of $250,000 per year for the first 2 years. The desire is that we would be able to add 6 SUVs for student transportation and staff transportation during the upcoming school year. This amended agreement to include minor transportation and statement of self-insurance are an example that came to us from the Ottawa School District. They recently approved this. We've also discussed it with Newton, Olathe, and a few other school districts in the state of Kansas regarding their practices. And these documents have been reviewed by legal counsel as well. So essentially the timing for these documents is that the orders that come in to build the vehicles essentially, now is the time to get those. With our current lease agreement, our agreement was to get 11 of the maintenance and operation vehicles. We received our 5th today, so you can see it takes a while to build those vehicles and get them here. So that's why this is being presented to you early in the summer. So, any questions?
Would it help you if we approve it now? Would it be better than approving it in July?
It would help get those vehicles here earlier.
Somebody else make that.
Any other questions, comments, motion? Yes.
I move that we approve the enterprise agreement as presented.
Is there a second? All seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And back to the podium is Lynn Exline for item 8D, policy review.
Okay, I am just using what is actually in your board packet, and so that's what I'm projecting. You can either follow along with me or you can follow along in your actual packet. We have 2 board policies that need to be updated, and the first one has to do with what Dr. Stevens presented earlier, the graduation requirements. So we do have a board policy, IHF, that outlines graduation requirements for our students, and there are a couple things in that policy that need to be updated to get in alignment with what the Kansas State Board of Education recently updated on their side. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is that it is noting that the first set of graduation requirements in our current policy apply to classes of 25, 26, and 27. Because with the incoming freshmen, there is a change, there are several changes to the graduation requirements. So that yellow there just clarifies that that's the sophomores, juniors, and seniors. On the next page, then, you'll notice that we have inserted the new graduation requirements for the incoming freshmen, the class of 2028. And on that particular set of graduation requirements, the STEM requirement actually replaces our computer applications credit. So that's just it broadens what students can take for that STEM credit. They can take those same classes on the computer side, but they can also take upper level math and science, and that's something that the Kansas State Board of Education has added into their requirements. The other change is that for years, we have had students take financial literacy. That's been a required enrollment, but it has not been an actual graduation credit requirement. And so that needs to be added as a requirement for graduation. Students must pass that class to graduate, beginning with the class of 2028. As I said, though, we've been having kids enroll in that for years. And then the elective requirements, as a result, decrease by half a credit for the incoming freshmen because that half credit shifts to that financial literacy requirement. Any questions on that policy? Oh, the last thing on there actually gives a nod to the requirement for 2 post-secondary assets to be earned, and those were what you just approved a few moments ago. Okay, then non-resident students, in the enrollment expectations, the gift that keeps giving. As you know, we have always allowed non-resident students to enroll in USD 305, and so these changes to this policy are simply to comply with legislative action that was recently taken. So I just want to go through the changes that are before you so that you are aware of just the slight adjustments that have been made. The first is that a clarification that non-resident enrollment does not apply to virtual schools. That was something that they clarified this year. And you can see that we simply moved the statement about students experiencing homelessness. The expectation is that if a student is experiencing homelessness, that we allow them to enroll in the school of origin. So at the time they became homeless, if they are attending Huesner, they may continue to attend Huesner no matter where they're living, and they are not subject to the lottery. There was a change in the window, the application window. The application window used to be June 1st through June 30th, and the legislature changed that we have to accept applications from non-resident students from January 1st through June 15th. This year, we will go ahead and accept those through June 30th because that's what we've put on our website, and we'll still have ample time to go through and do the lottery process. But in the future, January 1st is when we'll start accepting those applications. We can always be more liberal than what is required in the state law, but this actually complies with the state law, January 1st through June 15th. Keep in mind, we will not know how many open seats that we have in any building until I present that to you in that April meeting to be posted in May. So, but we will accept applications the whole second semester is essentially what this means. Next, the law allows districts to evaluate non-resident students for being in good standing. In the past, the expectation was that any student that applied would be accepted and that we would evaluate whether or not they were in good standing after they had already been here a year. That was changed so that we can actually review educational records and make a determination if a student is good standing before they ever enter our doors. That is not something we have done in the past. In the past, if a student has been subject to an expulsion or a long-term suspension at the time they try to enroll with us, the answer is no. And so that would continue. But our intention would not be to, although it would be in policy, our intention would not be to go through academic records and determine whether or not we were going to say yes or no, because that just has not been past practice in USD 305, and it really has been a non-issue.
To be clear, all of this was a non-issue.
To be
And-
clear,
Yeah.
yes. we had a procedure that was working really well, so, but we have figured this out and we'll be fine. So priority for filling open seats, there were a couple changes there. Children in foster care are automatically considered resident students. We want to provide as much stability for our students that have disruptions in their lives as possible. So that would be very similar to students experiencing homelessness, and that would be something that we would just do anyway to protect our children. The other piece is that employees' children are not subject to the lottery. They may enroll. We have been allowing that. And the last piece that I think has changed is that students who are currently enrolled in USD 305 are grandfathered in, if you will, which we were doing anyway. The policy did strike the language on transportation. Remember, we've had multiple conversations about that. There's been a lot of conversation about if a student is eligible for transportation because of an IEP. The federal law actually takes precedence over any state law. So there was a change made at the legislative level, and it says now that neither the school district nor the receiving school district will be required to provide transportation unless there's another law that says we have to. Okay, and we knew that anyway, and we're planning on that anyway, because we will certainly make sure that we are doing our very best to comply with all of those expectations. The policy does clarify that I will submit annually, before there was no frequency mentioned, that I will submit annually to have KSDE, the policy to KSDE, and then how many students that we've accepted on non-resident transfers as well. Okay, so the very last thing that I want you to know is it was added an appeal process. So if we determine after a student has enrolled that things didn't go well and that they really should go back to their home district, and that might be an instance where transportation is an issue and they can't get to school, and so they're chronically absent, and we know that it would be best for them to be where they could get to school regularly for their long-term educational development. So if we determined they weren't in good standing, situation like that perhaps, that the family can appeal to the Board of Education that the administrative decision to determine that they're not in good standing. So that appeal process is something that's now required in law. You'll see that outlined, I think, on the last page. Okay, so with that, questions that you have on the non-resident enrollment process?
I have a question. It says that the virtual school's not included in all this, but can't we accept students from elsewhere in the virtual school? Is it just under different rules?
We can accept students from anywhere that we'd like under the virtual school enrollment. From all over Kansas, if we choose to do that. It is just, for some reason, they just decided that they wouldn't make the virtual schools have to determine seats and go through all of this process that the bricks and mortar schools have to. So yes, we can still accept non-resident students there.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments? We also could approve these tonight. If there are no concerns, I think the majority of it was based on state law, not our preference, so they're fairly set.
I may get it wrong, but I move we approve all of the updated board policy for IHF and JBCC.
Is there a second? Scott seconds. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. You had like written it down and everything. You were ready. Let me scroll here, sorry. On to school board reports and upcoming dates of importance. 2 dates on our calendar over the next couple months here. Thursday, June 20th, the Salina Adult Education Center graduation. and Wednesday, July 10th, the Board of Education retreat. We'll start with Paul for board report.
I think it's been a great meeting here, getting a lot of things moving before waiting too long so that we can get a little bit farther ahead on the game. So applaud everybody for their forthrightness and trying to get everything done and moving forward on that. My report fairly brief due to the fact that through that graduations we did on the 19th. Very enjoyable time for my first time to go out there and hand out diplomas and have Scott slap me in the back with the books. But no, it's very enjoyable. Sad that we had a torrential downpour and hail coming down during half of the south, but it wasn't as bad as it turned out to be. So, other than that, it's been fairly light in this, and been taking advantage of the time that school's been off to babysit grandkids and enjoy the time with them and take care of other emergent family needs. So, thank you.
I did meet with the Heartland. It was moved back because of graduate end of school functions at the school. So we had our meeting there. They are done for the school year, so we won't be meeting until it kicks back up again. Did the graduations. Also, the opioid team is firing back up again, so we'll be having those meetings over at the health department. I think that's about it.
I attended the South graduation, and that was it.
I attended the Parks and Rec Advisory Board, and I'll give you a few highlights from that. They put up a new fence around the train engine in the Kenwood Park due to vandalism, and they're planning for more dog parks in Salina. They had serious underground plumbing issues that prevented the opening of the Jerry Ivy Spray Park. And the bathrooms at the new tennis facility are all done. They just erected solar panels next to Kenwood Cove because it was paying a premium electricity rate all year round to be able to have electricity during the summer when it's open. So they're trying to save some money by installing the solar panels and using that electricity instead. And they have all new carts at the municipal golf course, all battery powered. I also attended both graduations, and that's all.
Thank you. I too attended graduations and the CKCIU Board of Control meeting. I don't think anything big to discuss from that. Also had the privilege of serving on the 305 negotiations team with NAA Salina, and just appreciate we got to mutual agreement last week. I think there was a press release about it. We look forward to the certified staff ratifying that contract here soon, but just appreciate from the NAA Salina negotiating team the openness of conversation and everything we got accomplished during that time. So, and then we continue to look forward to getting accomplished over the next year before negotiations next year. So, on to superintendent's report with Superintendent Exline.
Okay, just a couple updates for you. I want you to know that we are going to start another round of letters training. We had over 100 people involved in that first round, and it has been excellent. I've been participating in that, and I just can't say enough positive about what I'm learning in that training. And I know that our teachers are really out implementing and trying really hard to do their very best to teach our children how to read. So for the second round, we already have 85 teachers signed up. That was just within a very short period of time. I'm sure that number has grown since I last checked, but 85 teachers, so that's really positive. Another update that I wanted to give you is that the elementary principals and I went to Heartland to meet with Lisa Larson and her team to learn a little bit more about the Head Start requirements for preschool classrooms. because next year, the plan is that our children that are in preschool, in the school-based programs, meaning they attend Meadowlark or Stewart or Oakdale for preschool rather than the Heartland site, they will actually be eligible for Head Start services if they qualify. And so in the past, students that were attending those school-based programs had to decide, do I want to attend the school-based program where I transition right to kindergarten, or do I want all of those Head Start services and go to the Heartland site? So now we are partnering between those two preschool programs, and the students that are eligible for the family consultant services will have access to those. And so we went to just learn a little bit more about what else is required in order for us to be able to provide those services to children that are in the 8 elementary buildings. So that's really good news. The other thing is I did get to go see Dr. Hattie. There were a group of us that got to go see him. He's the one that has done all the visible learning meta-analysis research. And so that was really exciting to hear him and how he framed the work that we're doing. So that was a really positive day. Attended several state baseball, state track, lots of success for students at state competitions here at the end of the year, so that was great. And then the last thing I want to tell you is the chronic absenteeism numbers came out today, and we are down again. We went down a little over 1% this year, and that data is not validated yet, but I got online and looked, and so that was positive. 2 years ago, we were at 32.76% of our students chronically absent, and those numbers look like we'll be at about 21.86%. So we still have work to do. When 1 in 5 students are missing 10% or more of the school days, that is, we need to be addressing that. And what we know is if the children are in the classrooms, students are in the classrooms, that our teachers can teach them, but we've got to have them there on a regular basis, and so we'll continue to put efforts there. But I was really pleased that we are down again in those numbers, and we'll just kind of try to continue that downward trend.
Thank you. We do have an executive session on our agenda, like 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 minutes. We just want to visit a little bit about negotiations.
Okay. So 15 minutes. Your motion?
I move that the Board of Education go into executive session at 7 o'clock for 15 minutes for the purpose of discussing employer-employee negotiations. Because if this matter were discussed in open session, it might jeopardize resolution of the negotiation issues, and that the Board of Education reconvene into open session at 7:15 in the SEC room.
Thank you. Is there a second? Dana seconds. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We will recess into executive session. We do have the possibility for action on our agenda after that executive session, but we do not anticipate that. We'll be back here at 7:15. We are back in session and have no action to take as part of that executive session. We've reached the end of our agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn? A second? Everyone else seconded. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Motion carries 5-0. We're adjourned. Thank you.